And welcome for a final time! This is Equestria Girl. Wait, what's Equestria? This isn't the final chapter, but it is the final reading, because I'm not doing more of these. They suck, they take like 6 hours to make, and they're just not good quality. I don't even know why you're listening to this. Anyway, Chapter 7, Monday, Part 7, The Runaround. Twilight left quickly after a talk with Brad. Her car wasn't far from where they'd spoken, and she assumed he had a car in the lot as well. That, or he'd been waiting for her to come out there. She chose to believe the less stalkery of those choices. Even if he did seem like an alright guy, it was kind of hard to shake the thoughts of someone whose first impression of is, oh god, he's going to rape me. Now in the relative quiet of her car, actually very quiet, it was a Prius, despite being alone driving home for nearly 30 minutes, Twilight managed to avoid thinking about it. She was a very nervous driver. She had only gotten her license a few weeks ago after all, just before the school year had started. She kept her thoughts on the road and off today's events, but finally as she got home, pulling into the driveway, she started to think about all of this once more. Not so much Brad or any of the other people at the school, but the car itself. Her parents had only gotten it for her so she could drive to and from school every day, and now she had to tell them she was transferring away from it. It was completely possible that they'd refuse to sign the paperwork, and she'd be stuck there whether she liked it or not. No, they wouldn't do that to her. Would they? Twilight just sat there in the car for a while, once again remembering she'd left everything in a school locker. Well, at least it's there for tomorrow. And that's when it hit her that she'd have to go back tomorrow. But Syl had been right. The worst of it was over. And Celestia was right too. Twilight had transferred here to begin with for her education, so she should at least meet her new teachers. That was reason enough to calm her as she finally got out of her car, remotely locking it behind her. That, and she hadn't eaten all day. Despite having violently thrown up for what had to have been at least half an hour, she was famished. On the same key as her car key was a house key, and if her locker key hadn't been so needlessly ornate, it would have been on there too. She unlocked her front door and went in. It was a pretty standard house, exactly what you would imagine. So just imagine that. I don't want to have to describe the whole house. 2-story house, by the way, just so you know. Her parents weren't home yet and wouldn't be till about 6 or 7. She wouldn't have to cook either. It was Monday. Pizza night. Twilight just grabbed Muffin out of the fridge and went upstairs. The muffin was gone before she even got to her room. She pulled up a chair and sat down at a computer and flicked it on. But it didn't even start loading before someone had noticed she was home. Whoa, damn, Spike! Twilight laughed as her dog jumped up onto her lap. Her brother wanted to name him something cool, something vicious, like Daisy or Sweetie. But Twilight had won the coin toss and got to call him something girly, like Spike. She'd even given him this adorable black leather chrome spiked collar. The little mutt had been tiny all those years ago when they'd first got him, but now he was a big, solid, slobbering 50-kilo wool purple pit bull. He was adorable! Twilight felt a little guilty. She'd completely forgotten about him and his walkies. Actually, no, she didn't feel guilty. He's a dog. He didn't know. She picked him up off her lap with surprising ease and put him down on the ground. Going over to her dresser, she slipped off her shoes and skirt and donned a pair of running pants and sneakers. She didn't bother closing the door. She was alone in the house and highly doubted Spike, a dog, cared about her stripping down to only her panties. Little did she know. Twilight left her room and headed down the stairs, Spike following right behind her. Down the stairs and towards the door, she grabbed his leash and attached it to Spike's spiked collar. Just a second to lock the door, and they were gone, practically sprinting down the street. Spike was full of energy as always, and Twilight was only just keeping up, holding his leash tight to keep him from getting too far ahead. She loved it as much as she hated it. Sprinting was fun and horrible at the same time. She tried to keep in shape, and succeeded at it. Hated the process, but loved the results. It was a contradiction she didn't understand, but didn't care either. After about 10 minutes and 3 kilometers, she was exhausted. Luckily, so was Spike. They'd run to a small shopping village as always. Spike knew the place, knew that it meant he was about to get a treat, and slowed nearly to a stop. Just walking now, Twilight was breathing heavily, covered in sweat. She tied Spike's leash to a pole and went in to get him his treat, along with a drink for herself. Unlike driving, running was simple. Plenty of time to think, so this time, when she stopped at the shops, she spent a little longer there than usual. But all the same, she returned with a treat for her dog and some stuff for herself before they were off running once more. Like always, they ended up going about 10 k's according to her Fitbit. Even with the muffin from earlier, she was more than hungry again by this point. It was just getting dark when she returned home. Her father's car was already there. Pizza! She rushed inside and the smell instantly hit her nose, not to mention Spike's. She walked into the kitchen and saw 3 boxes on the counter, but before she could say anything, "Shower first. I could smell you when you walked in." It wasn't a joke either. She sweat quite a lot. She huffed, more from exhaustion than annoyance though. Let Spike off his leash and went upstairs. Grabbing a few clothes to change into afterwards, she noticed her computer was still turned on. Not unusual, but it reminded her of something. Twilight went over and grabbed her phone that was always plugged into it. It wasn't a new phone, but it wasn't an old one either. An iFruit 1. Years out of date, but it still worked fine. It was Shining's old phone. Twilight wasn't allowed to bring it to school and was only supposed to be used for emergencies. So, the irony of not allowed at school in today's emergencies was strong. It always had credit, and a few of her friends' numbers were on it. Twilight couldn't remember the last time she'd used either of them, though. Now, though, she was finally going to use it. She put in Syl's number and sent off a message. "Hey, it's me. So, you have my number from this. Call me whenever. Just not too much. Okay?" Hit send and put it back down, then went off to take a shower. After an incredibly hot and steamy shower scene with lots of soap dropping, Twilight came back into her room, wearing a towel wrapped around her hair, and nothing else. She changed into her fresh clothes, which were coincidentally the same type she'd been wearing earlier. She'd had a lot of time to think in the shower, and forgotten all about the message she'd sent. Her phone rang. She went over and picked it up. Scrolling over the sleep screen, she read, "Who is this and how'd you get my number?" Apparently she should have wrote Syl's number down instead of just memorizing it. Twilight quickly replied with, "Sorry, I must have set the wrong number." She then hit send and realized how failed she grammared. Too late. Her stomach growled as the smell of pizza hit her nose once more. Transforming into little more than a zombie, she shambled out of her room and down the stairs. Her mother had gotten home while she was in the shower, and was setting up the table as her father set up the plates. And by plates I mean just putting a pizza box in front of each seat. Twilight took her seat and opened hers up. It was vegetarian, but not because she was one, she just loved all the onions and spicy capsicums on hers. Totally not a closet vegetarian at all. She quickly grabbed a slice and went to gob it down. Ahem, her mother interrupted, clearing her throat. "Oh, hi Mum, how was your day?" she asked, knowing what her mum wanted. "Oh, it was pretty good. How was your first day at school?" she asked Twilight, who'd expected that question. But expecting it didn't help her come up with an answer. Everything that had happened, she knew her mum would understand that she didn't want to stay there, but it was good. I met someone and we talked, and we're gonna hang out sometime. Maybe, she replied, not lying but not telling the whole truth. Twilight was going to give the school a chance at least before writing it off. At least that's how she rationalized in her head, not telling her mother. "That's good to hear," she said as she grabbed a slice herself and began to eat. Her name was also Twilight, though it was Twilight Velvet in full, and thus telling you her name and calling her Twilight in that conversation would have just made it more confusing. It's kinda pointless saying this, but I just wanted you to know. Her Velvet's name is Orion, by the way. Orion Comet. But most of his friends just call him OC. The rest of dinner passed in silence as always, at least until Spike farted. But that's what happens when you run a dog for a few hours and then feed it a giant can of food. Eventually, Twilight returned to her room and hopped back on her computer. A couple of minutes passed before she'd noticed she'd gotten another message on her phone. "Haha, I'm kidding, Twilight. You got the right number and I got yours. I'll call you sometimes and see if you want to hang out. And feel free to call me whenever. Silver Spoon. Heart, heart, winky face." Wow. She actually wrote heart, heart, winky face. And that was Chapter 7. We finally made it through Monday. Only another full week to go. So, you do the maths on that, that should be about 35 more chapters. Dear God. Hopefully I'm gonna speed it up a little, but knowing me, I'm probably not. I'm up to Thursday. Chapter 27. This chapter originally had a deleted scene, which was then undeleted because it actually becomes relevant in the future. Try and figure out which one it was, I dare you. There's a timetable with all of Twilight's classes on it, so you know what class is when, and mostly so that I can just keep consistent, because I will completely forget, and I put so much time working this timetable out. I mean, I had to do it precisely so that nothing's got more than 3 per week, but no 2 are in the same day. It was actually quite complicated. Also, I had to make sure this one was here and this one was before that, so that this character could meet that character then, and this one could do that afterwards. And if you can't see, I'm actually making some hand motions with my hand, which you can't see because I didn't put this video in. But it's like all wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. Also, we're going to make a certain character who may or may not have a doctorate. Seeing this is most likely the last dramatic reading I'll be doing, I would like to give a shout out to Zaraland, who wrote a fucking wall of text mini review of Chapter 6. I bloody love it. I made a reply that was also a wall of text, though lesser. Then he made another wall of text reply to that. Damn, I love that guy. I want to have his babies. Or force him to have mine, I'm not sure. Either will work. Either way, shout out to Zaraland. The end. Or is it? It's not, but it is the end of dramatic readings. Both this one and all of them. The end. For real this time. God damn! That doesn't make grammata. Grammata? Grammatic. Grammar. Grammata. It's a new phrase. Totally not a closet.